For years, First Brands Group looked like the kind of industrial roll-up Wall Street understood perfectly. A private auto parts supplier, buying brands, expanding product lines, and turning a fragmented aftermarket into a larger machine. It sold the unglamorous things that keep cars moving: brakes, filters, wipers, lighting systems, and other replacement parts used across the automotive aftermarket. Prosecutors later described it as a global automotive company that reported approximately $5 billion in annual net sales worldwide. But behind the familiar rhythm of acquisitions and financing, prosecutors alleged something very different was happening. According to the indictment unsealed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, Patrick James, the founder and former CEO of First Brands, and Edward James, a former senior executive and Patrick's brother, allegedly deceived banks and direct lenders through fake collateral, double and triple pledged assets, and misleading financial statements. The company filed for bankruptcy on September 28, 2025. By the time it entered Chapter 11, First Brands declared just $12 million in cash and more than $9 billion in liabilities, according to the Justice Department. The collapse did not look like a normal restructuring. It looked like the sudden implosion of a financial structure that depended on trust, speed, and opacity. And according to prosecutors, when the structure broke, lenders and creditors were left facing billions in losses. This is the story of how First Brands became a major player in the auto parts market, how its financing machine allegedly hid the true condition of the company, and how a private empire built on debt, factoring, and off-balance sheet inventory financing came apart. First Brands Group was not a public market darling with quarterly earnings calls and daily stock coverage. It was private. That mattered. Private companies can be large, systemically important to suppliers and customers, and deeply intertwined with financial institutions, while still operating outside the constant scrutiny faced by listed companies. Founded in 2013 and based in Cleveland, Ohio, First Brands operated as an automotive aftermarket parts supplier. It developed, marketed, and sold replacement parts including brakes, filters, wipers, and lights under multiple brand names. Reuters described First Brands as a supplier of auto parts including brakes, filters, and lighting systems, with about $5 billion in annual sales. The company's Chapter 11 cases were filed in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of Texas and jointly administered under case number 25-90399. First Brands Group, LLC, and affiliated debtors filed voluntary petitions for relief under Chapter 11 on September 28, 2025. On the surface, the business was understandable. Cars need replacement parts. Drivers delay buying new cars, but they still need repairs. Shops need inventory. Retailers need suppliers. A company that controls a large portfolio of aftermarket brands can appear durable, boring, and attractive to lenders. The strategy was expansion by acquisition. Reuters reported that First Brands built its position as a major industry player through debt-financed acquisitions of rival auto parts companies. Debt-fueled growth can work when cash flow is stable, accounting is reliable, and financing partners understand the true risk. But in this case, prosecutors allege the growth was not simply financed by ordinary borrowing. They allege it was supported by fake invoices, inflated invoices, double-pledged receivables, manipulated financial statements, concealed liabilities, and off-balance sheet inventory financing arrangements. The alleged mechanics were not flashy. No viral app, no consumer mania, no celebrity pitch, just collateral, invoices, borrowing bases, receivables, inventory, and financial statements. The machinery was technical. That was part of the danger. First Brands' rise depended on the logic of the roll-up. Acquire businesses, consolidate operations, use the combined scale to borrow more, use that financing to acquire again. Reuters reported that First Brands had become one of the world's largest auto parts suppliers before its collapse. The company's position in the supply chain gave it weight beyond its own balance sheet. Reuters reported that First Brand's Chapter 11 case disrupted supply chains for major automakers, including Ford and General Motors. Factoring is a financing structure where a company sells customer receivables, essentially invoices and the right to collect payment, to financing counterparties in exchange for cash up front. In a legitimate structure, it can be a normal liquidity tool. A supplier ships goods. A customer owes payment. A factor advances cash against that receivable. Later, the customer pays. But factoring depends on a simple assumption. The receivable must be real, collectible, and not already sold or pledged somewhere else. According to prosecutors, First Brands allegedly violated that assumption. The indictment alleges that Patrick James and Edward James deceived factoring partners by causing First Brands employees to submit fake invoices, fraudulently inflated invoices, and double-pledged invoices. Prosecutors allege that some invoices were generated for transactions that never occurred, while others had dollar amounts altered to make them appear more valuable. The alleged result? First Brands sold factoring partners billions of dollars of purported customer receivables that did not exist. As the bankruptcy began, creditors alleged that roughly $2.3 billion tied to the company's factored receivables had effectively vanished, sold or pledged to more than one financier at the same time. The company also used inventory financing. According to the Justice Department, Patrick James allegedly used entities he owned and controlled, described by prosecutors as the James entities, in inventory financing arrangements with at least 3 inventory financiers. Those lenders advanced funds to the James entities to buy inventory from First Brands. The James entities then pledged that inventory back to the lenders as collateral. Prosecutors allege those arrangements were kept outside First Brands' corporate balance sheet and concealed from senior lenders. The problem was not merely that the structure was complex. The problem, according to prosecutors, was that the complexity allegedly created a false picture of the company. Money that looked like ordinary customer receipts was allegedly loan proceeds routed through outside entities. Inventory that appeared unencumbered was allegedly already pledged to senior lenders. Financial statements that lenders relied on were allegedly manipulated through unsupported adjustments and internal bridge files that compared accurate corporate financials with manipulated versions. This was the hidden engine prosecutors described, not merely debt, but a system of repeated borrowing against assets whose true ownership, validity, and priority were allegedly obscured. The turning point came when confidence failed. A private company financed by complex collateral structures can survive for a long time, as long as lenders keep lending, counterparties keep rolling exposure, and no one forces every claim onto the table at once. Bankruptcy does exactly that. It creates a courtroom where creditors demand answers. First Brands filed for bankruptcy on September 28, 2025. Reuters reported that the company filed after disclosing liabilities exceeding $10 billion. As the bankruptcy unfolded, allegations about the company's financing practices moved from market concern to formal investigation. Reuters reported that a U.S. bankruptcy judge approved the appointment of Martin DeLuca, a partner at Boies Schiller Flexner, as an independent examiner in the Chapter 11 case, with a $7 million budget focused on alleged fraud tied to First Brands' use of third-party financing for customer invoices. Kroll's docket identifies the cases as pending before U.S. bankruptcy judge Christopher M. Lopez in the Southern District of Texas under case number 25-90399. Then, the criminal case arrived. On January 29, 2026, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announced the unsealing of an indictment charging Patrick James and Edward James. Both men were arrested in Ohio that day, and the case was assigned to U.S. District Judge Annalisa Torres. Patrick James was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, multiple counts of wire fraud and bank fraud, and an additional count of managing a continuing financial crimes enterprise. Edward James was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and multiple counts of wire fraud and bank fraud. Money laundering was not a rhetorical label here. It was part of the indictment. Both men were charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering. But the legal line is essential. The charges are allegations. The Justice Department stated that the charges contained in the indictment are merely accusations, and that the defendants are presumed innocent, unless and until proven guilty. On February 4, 2026, Patrick James pleaded not guilty to 9 criminal counts, and Edward James pleaded not guilty to 8. Patrick James, 61, was released on a $50 million bond secured by properties in Ohio, a home in the Hamptons, and $5 million in cash. A trial was initially set for July 2026, and the criminal trial was later scheduled for February 9, 2027. The defense pushed back. In court papers, lawyers for Patrick James pointed to macroeconomic factors, such as tariffs, as contributing to the firm's troubles, and Patrick James accused some lenders of predatory practices and onerous fees that he said tipped First Brands into Chapter 11. Separately, in civil lawsuits brought by First Brands' own bankruptcy advisors, one suit accused Patrick James of misappropriating more than $700 million between 2018 and the September 2025 filing. Money, the suit said, helped fund a lavish lifestyle. Those civil claims, too, are allegations. One figure had already changed the posture of the case. Peter Andrew Brumbergs, a former First Brands executive, pleaded guilty before Judge Torres on January 26, 2026, and is cooperating with the government. That guilty plea is a fact. The allegations against Patrick James and Edward James remain allegations unless proven in court. The collapse of First Brands became more than a bankruptcy. It became a stress test for lenders, customers, suppliers, and the market's confidence in private credit and trade finance structures. First Brands' implosion alarmed Wall Street, in part because major financial firms had helped fund its growth. Reuters reported that institutions exposed to the company included BlackRock, Jefferies, and Switzerland's UBS. At the founders' arraignment, a federal prosecutor said the defendants had caused more than $10 billion in losses, including for some of the most sophisticated financial institutions in the world, while collecting tens of millions of dollars for themselves. Reuters reported that First Brands began its bankruptcy with a $1.1 billion loan from existing lenders, but that by January, the company had burned through most of that cash and was relying on short-term funding from Ford and General Motors. At a court hearing, a First Brands attorney said the fraud was far more severe than anyone realized when the company filed, and that First Brands had been unable to find a buyer for the whole company once lenders and potential buyers learned the extent of the alleged fraud. The collapse reached the operating business. First Brands announced it had begun winding down parts of its North American operations, including brake parts, Cardone, and Autolite, while continuing to run remaining businesses as it sought buyers. Reuters reported that those units together employed about 4,000 people. To keep critical parts flowing, Ford and General Motors provided short-term support through prepayments, including $48 million for parts over a single week, so First Brands could keep operating the businesses that served them. The collapse also moved toward liquidation. In June 2026, Reuters reported that a U.S. bankruptcy judge in Houston allowed First Brands to move ahead with a liquidation plan designed to fund lawsuits against the company's indicted founder and other insiders in an effort to recover money for creditors. The company had more than $11 billion in debts, and the plan included a litigation trust funded with at least $75 million to pursue claims. Court filings described that trust as backed by roughly $50 million committed by certain debtor-in-possession lenders and $25 million from the company's own balance sheet, with a litigation trustee appointed to chase the claims. The exposure rippled across private credit. The same opacity that allegedly let First Brands raise money, layered factoring, off-balance sheet inventory facilities, and receivables sold to multiple counterparties, meant that when the company failed, sophisticated funds and banks discovered their claims overlapped or rested on collateral that may not have existed. That is where the story becomes bigger than one company. In normal finance, collateral is meant to reduce uncertainty. A receivable is supposed to represent money owed. Inventory is supposed to be traceable. A borrowing base is supposed to define what can safely support a loan. But when the same collateral is allegedly pledged more than once, when invoices are allegedly fake or inflated, and when liabilities are allegedly concealed outside the balance sheet, the architecture of credit changes. The lender is no longer underwriting a business. The lender is underwriting a story. And according to prosecutors, the story told by First Brands was false. The First Brands case is not only about auto parts. It is about what happens when complexity becomes a hiding place. Factoring is not inherently fraudulent. Inventory financing is not inherently fraudulent. Off-balance sheet structures are not automatically illegal. Acquisition-led growth is not automatically dangerous. But when all of those elements are combined inside a private company, funded by sophisticated lenders and supported by financial statements that prosecutors allege were manipulated, the risk can become difficult to see until liquidity disappears. The alleged fraud lasted from about 2018 through about 2025, according to the Justice Department. That timeline matters. A scheme alleged to run for years does not survive only because of one false document. It survives because many parties accept the operating rhythm. Invoices are financed. Debt is rolled, receivables are purchased, collateral reports are reviewed, and the company keeps moving. The machine works until it does not. When the machine stopped, First Brands did not simply face a refinancing problem. It faced a trust problem. Reuters reported that a company attorney said there was simply no trust in the company. That sentence may be the cleanest explanation of the collapse. Credit markets run on documents, contracts, collateral, and law. But beneath all of that, they run on trust. Trust that the invoice exists. Trust that the collateral is not already pledged. Trust that the balance sheet reflects real obligations. Trust that management is not using complexity to manufacture liquidity. When that trust disappears, the company can no longer be valued as a going concern. It becomes a claims battlefield. Creditors fight over priority. Customers fund operations only to protect supply chains. Assets are sold in pieces. Investigators follow the money. And the story that once supported billions in financing becomes evidence. There is a broader lesson here for private credit. Over the last decade, more and more corporate borrowing moved away from public markets and into private lenders, direct lending funds, and supply chain finance, arenas with less disclosure and less standardized oversight than the public bond market. First Brands sat squarely inside that world. Its lenders were not naive retail investors. They were professional institutions, and they still could not see the full picture in time. When borrowing is structured to be hard to follow, even sophisticated capital can be caught. First Brands' collapse shows how a private industrial company can become a financial fault line. It also shows why boring businesses can carry extraordinary risk when the financing behind them is opaque. The parts were ordinary. The structure was not. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. All information is sourced from publicly available documents, regulatory filings, and credentialed news organizations. Source links are available in the description.